System.
My name is Josh Armstrong, and on behalf of the Thematic Programming Committee, Orientation Board, and Comprehensive Leadership Program, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's special evening with Father Greg Boyle. Father Greg used to stand where you are standing. Over 30 years ago, he walked from College Hall to St. Al's, down to the COG and over to De Smet, just like every other Gonzaga student, just like you. In the years since his time at Gonzaga, Father Greg has done some extraordinary things. Become an ordained Jesuit priest in 1984, served in Bolivia, and taught high school students, among other endeavors. Father Boyle could have nestled himself in the halls of a comfortable parish, and his life still would have been spent in service to others. But he did what not everyone has the courage to do. He listened to his calling, and soon found his life's work on some of the toughest, most dangerous streets in America. In 1986, Father Boyle was appointed pastor of the Dolores Mission in Boyle Heights, California. Situated in the middle of the heavily gang-populated neighborhoods, he knew a response to the escalating violence was needed, and he started Jobs for a Future, an organization dedicated to helping find legitimate employment for gang members wanting to leave that life behind. By 2001, Jobs for a Future and Homeboy Bakery had proved successful enough to open up more businesses, and Homeboy Industries was born as an independent nonprofit. Today, Homeboy Industries includes Homeboy Bakery, Homeboy Silk Screening, Homeboy and Homegirl Merchandise, and Homegirl Cafe. What Father Greg might tell you about his work is that he believes in it. He sees men and women turn around their lives for themselves and for their families. He sees miracles happen, and he won't ever give up hope that they still will happen. But what he would not tell you is that his work is easier without roadblocks or criticism. Father Greg serves a population that many in America want little to do with, and yet he stays in Los Angeles, diligently and persistently giving a chance to the one man or woman who will take it. Here at Gonzaga, we're fortunate to have the opportunity to see firsthand what Father Greg's service has done for this community. Each year, over spring break, we send a group of students to East LA to serve alongside the people of the Dolores Mission. Every few years, we're graced with a visit from Father Greg, who works relentlessly to share the vision of Homeboys and the stories of the men and women that he cares so deeply for. And just over a month ago, we met Rosie, Marlene, Michelle, and Patty, who visited Gonzaga from Homegirl Cafe. They cooked for many of you during orientation, so you know by their food alone just how talented they are. But we also got to hear their stories, growing up in gang life, getting out of jail, what it's like to search for a job with a criminal record, raising a child and wanting to do whatever it takes to make a better life for her. And we also saw how grateful these young women are for Father Greg. As one of them shared, "I knew G from when he visited us in prison. And when I got out and went to see him, he just said, 'I've been waiting for you, kiddo.'" That's who G is. A man who serves, waits, remembers, cares. What a privilege it is for us to have an evening with him tonight. Father Greg.
I'm not blowing smoke up. That's the best introduction, seriously, I've ever had. Seriously. Thank you. Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you, Joe Alberts. Thank you, Gonzaga. It's great to be with you here today. I also have with me Mario and Bobby, who will join me during the question and answer period. They've been, go ahead and stand, both of you stand. There you go. They've been working all day, so they're taking a break for the next 50 minutes. They've been speaking all day, like about 4 talks in different classes. I apologize, some of you have heard me before. That happens. Once I gave a big, huge keynote at this foster grandparents gathering, and I had, this was the big gathering of the year, and I had spoken the year before at the very same gathering, you know, so this grandmother came up to me, and I think she liked my talk. She had big tears in her eyes, and she grabbed both my hands and she said, "I heard you last year." It never gets better. Maybe I'm delusional, but I'm hoping she misspoke. It was like a homie once who was in my office, and I was kind of giving, I thought, a kind of a fevered, good pep talk, and he got up and gave me a big hug, and he said, "Damn, G, you never amaze me." Again, maybe I'm delusional. I was at a county jail not long ago, and it was a huge kind of dining hall, not unlike this, but it had about 300 inmates in it, and a very imposing, menacing-looking gang member with lots of tattoos came up to me, and he goes, "So, you're the famous Father Greg, G-Dog. I know all about you. Your reputation exceeds you." I say, "Well, you are not the first one to say that." So thank you for being here. Thank you for reading the book, those of you who did. And you know, there's vision that brings you out here to sit on the cold Cataldo linoleum, and it doesn't have anything to do with me or the book. It has to do with you wanting the world to look differently than it currently looks, and good for you. We're all kind of moved by a vision. The prophet Habakkuk writes, "The vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, wait for it." But one of the great things that I recall about Gonzaga is that part of your education here is our unwillingness to kind of wait for too long. You don't want to have los brazos cruzados and tapping your feet and staring at your watch, as you want to make something happen. And so what I want to suggest, and certainly those who read the book know that what the hope is that we will create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly, I think, when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. So how do we stand against forgetting that? How do we imagine a circle of compassion and then seek to dismantle the barriers that exclude? How do we imagine that very same circle and then imagine nobody standing outside of it? And to that end, we all are called, every single person in this packed room is called to inch our ways out to the margins, to the very edges, so that we can stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless. So we can stand with those whose dignity has been denied, and with those whose burdens are more than they can bear. And when you're really lucky, you get to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, with the demonized, so that the demonizing will stop, and with the disposable, so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. I suspect that if kinship was our goal, we would no longer be promoting justice, we would in fact be celebrating it. And so we stand against this illusion that we are separate. No us and them, just us. So it's the privilege of my life to know people like Bobby and Mario, and for 25 years to have worked with gang members, and they've taught me everything of value, for sure. But in the last couple of years, they've taught me how to text, so I couldn't be more grateful to them. It sure beats the heck out of actually talking to people. And so I'm pretty good at it, LOL and OMG and BTW, and there's a new one the homies taught me, OHN, which apparently stands for, oh hell no. And I've been using that one quite a bit lately. And so there I am with two homies driving to Xavier High School. Anybody here in the house in near Palm Desert? There you go, right back there. I knew there were two. And so Manuel and Poncho are going with me to help give a talk there in the gym. And we meet around 9, and we're driving. And I have about 300 employees, and there are 2 of them. And so we're driving. They're older vatos who have been to prison and tattooed and been there, done that. And so we're about 15 minutes on the road, and Manuel in the front seat gets incoming, and you can tell, you know, it's a text and he's reading it and he kind of chuckles to himself. And I said, what is it? Oh, it's dumb, it's Snoopy, back at the office. Well, Snoopy and Manuel worked together in the clock-in room, clocking in hundreds and hundreds of people. And I just saw Snoopy. He gave me a big abrazo as the day began, right in front of the office. And I said, well, what's it say? Oh, it's dumb. Hang on a second. Hey, dog, it's me, Snoops. Yeah, they got my ass locked up at county jail. They're charging me with being the ugliest vato in America. You have to come down right now, show them they got the wrong guy. Well, we died laughing. And then I realized that Manuel and Snoopy are enemies. They're from rival gangs. They used to shoot bullets at each other. Now they shoot text messages. And there's a word for that, and the word is kinship. How can we seek a compassion that, in fact, can stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it? For the measure of our compassion lies not in our service of those on the margins, but in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. Service is great, service is the hallway. But it leads to the ballroom. You want to get to the ballroom where kinship resides. For an idea has taken root in the world, it's at the root of all that's wrong with it, and the idea would be this, that there just might be lives out there that matter less than other lives. So how do we together stand against that idea? One of the great privileges of my life was knowing Cesar Chavez as a friend, and I remember a reporter had asked him, or made a comment, said, wow, these farm workers, they sure love you. And Cesar just shrugged and smiled and he said, the feeling's mutual, which is sort of the whole idea of this, that we arrive at a place of mutuality and kinship. No more us and them, just us. There's a homie who nobody got more jobs and opportunities at employment than this guy Caesar. Everybody called him Dreamer. He grew up in the projects where I was pastor. And I'd known him since he was a little mocosito coming up, and got into a gang, and kind of a knucklehead, but very smart, always with a dangerous sense of humor. And but you know, he'd work for me at some time in one of our businesses, or we'd find a job out in the private sector. But he, you know, sometimes he would, after too long, he'd gravitate back to vague criminality, usually getting high or selling drugs, and then we'd start all over again. And this one time he had done about 8 months in a you know, in a prison for a violation, and he came to see me, and he says what homies often say, this time it'll be different. I go, so all right. So I pick up the phone with him there, and I call a friend of mine who runs a vending machine company in Alhambra, and he hires Caesar right on the spot. And 2 weeks later, Caesar's in my office, and he's proudly waving this very first paycheck. And he says, damn, gee, this paycheck makes me feel proper. I mean, my mom, she's proud of me, and my kids, they're not ashamed of me. And you know who I have to thank for this job. And I said, oh, gosh, who? And he looked at me strangely, and he said, well, God, of course. I said, oh, yeah. No, that's right, God. Yeah. He said, you thought I was going to say you, didn't you? No, gosh, God's number one. Yeah. He said, you are so lucky we're not living in them Genesis days. I'm sorry, them Genesis days? He goes, yeah, because God would have been had struck down your ass already by now. Well, I guess he told me, and we just, again, we fell out of our chairs, dying laughing, and suddenly kinship so quickly. I defy you to identify exactly, you know, who's the service provider and who's the service recipient. It's mutual. For many of you who've read the book know that one of the sort of the keen moments for me in my life, that for all its discomfort I would never trade it, this experience of kinship in my life, came some years ago when I got sick and had leukemia and went through chemotherapy, and I'm feeling pretty good at the moment, or as the homies always say to me still, I hear your cancer's in intermission. Apparently it stepped up to the lobby to buy popcorn, you know, so may the line be long. But this news appeared on the front page of the Sunday LA Times, and so word spread even among gang members. And so homies came out of the woodwork. You know, a homegirl named China left me a voicemail at home. Now it's our turn to take care of you. Very sweet. Big, huge homie named Grumpy, about 6'5", standing in front of my desk, big tears in his eyes. Apparently God had forgotten to give him a neck, you know, and he was standing there and he says, "What do I have that you need?" You know, meaning organs. I was so happy to tell him I didn't need any of his organs, you know, but it was the thought that counted. One of my favorites was a little 15-year-old knucklehead gang member who kind of came late in the game, so I was already well into my chemo. And I would sit at St. Vincent's Hospital connected to IVs, chemotherapy, and from 8 in the morning to like 3, and the homies would vie to take me to the hospital and fight with each other to pick me up at the hospital. And clearly the trip to and from the hospital was more harrowing than chemotherapy itself, you know, but but then I'd always come back to the office, and I loved being there rather than at home. But this kid came kind of late in the game, and he comes right in. I'm behind my desk, and he sits down. He looks positively stricken, you know. He says, "I hear you have leukemia." I said, "Yeah, I do." And there's this awkward silence, and "My cat had leukemia." "Yeah, she died." "Oh gosh, sorry to hear that. Awfully glad you stopped by. It just picked me right up there." One of my all-time favorites was a homie named Loco, who called me from jail, collect. And he had just read it in the paper that morning, and he said, "Hey, what's up with this leukemia anyway?" I said, "Well, it's cancer. It's in the blood. You know, the doctor says my white count's too high." Them doctors, they don't be knowing nothing. I said, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, hello, of course your white count's high." So I just accept more collect calls and have decided to call it Kinship. Homeboy Industries was born during the time that I was pastor of the poorest parish in the city of Los Angeles, Dolores Mission. Nestled in the middle of 2 public housing projects, Pico Gardens and Aliso Village, and together they comprised, at the time, the largest grouping of public housing west of the Mississippi. We had 8 gangs at war with each other, which was unheard of in public housing. I buried my first young person killed because of this sadness in 1988, and buried my 176th 2 months ago. Not all from that community, but I run a very large gang intervention program, so I get asked to do this. Our place was, according to the LAPD, the place of the highest concentration of gang activity in the whole city. So if LA was the gang capital of the world, my parish was the gang capital of Los Angeles. 1,100 gangs in the county, 86,000 gang members. So the first thing we did is we started a school, because there were so many junior high, middle school age kids who had been given the boot from their home school. Nobody wanted them, and they were wreaking havoc and violent and selling drugs. So I walked out to them in the projects and I said, "Hey, if I found a school that would take you, would you go?" And to my surprise, they all said yes. And then I couldn't find a school that would take them. So we sort of forced our hands. We had to start a school. So that brought the gang members to the church, and they occupied the 3rd floor of the elementary school. And so that created a little bit of a disconnect with my community, because after all, shouldn't churches be hermetically sealed? You know, good people in, bad people out. This messed with that idea a little bit. And soon gang members said, if only we had jobs. So myself and the women, it was only mainly women in the housing projects, we marched all around the factories that surrounded the housing projects in search of felony-friendly employers, you know, and that wasn't so forthcoming. So we couldn't wait any longer, so we started our own businesses in 1992, as was mentioned, Homeboy Bakery, this old tore-up bakery across the street. 1 month later, we started Homeboy Tortillas at Grand Central Market. Once we had plural, you know, we came up with the highfalutin Homeboy Industries, as if there was any industry involved in this venture, and now we're off and running. And not everything worked. Homeboy Plumbing was not a huge success, as I recall. Who knew? People didn't want gang members in their homes. I did not see that coming. And now we just sort of backed our way into, we're the largest gang intervention, rehab, and reentry program in the country. We didn't intend to do that. We just sort of evolved our way into it, trying to just listen and respond to the needs as they got articulated. And so 15,000 gang members a year walk through our doors, searching for a way to redirect their lives, to establish themselves in the therapeutic community, which is Homeboy Industries, where attachment repair sort of happens. The profile of all gang members who show up are in fact folks with disorganized attachment. Mom was either frightening or frightened, and you can't calm yourself down if you've never been soothed. And so they come and stay with us for a time. They'll learn a certain kind of resilience. And then they learn to re-identify who they are in the world, and they can go out into the world, and the world will throw at them what it will, and it won't topple them. So we offer every imaginable curricular offering, from anger management to parenting to grief and loss, endless things. We have mental health counseling team. We have free tattoo removal. No place on the planet Earth removes more tattoos than we do. We have a dedicated clinic, 3 laser machines, 27 volunteer doctors, 800 treatments a month. We still have a waiting list of 1,000. And it was all begun because of a guy named Frank, who wandered out of Corcoran State Prison. Aiden, you can cover your ears now. And he had tattooed on his forehead, and pardon my French, "Fuck the world," like a billboard, covering his entire forehead. And he looked at me and he said, "You know, I'm having a hard time finding a job." And I said, "Well, Frank, maybe we could put our heads together on this one, you know." And so I'm thinking, where am I going to send him? You know, like, do you want fries with that? No, we don't want any fries. Mothers are clutching their kids running out of the store. So I hired him, and he worked at our bakery for 2 years, bagging bread, and then and I found a doctor at White Memorial Hospital who gave me 1 hour once a month. And pretty soon I had a waiting list of 2,000 gang members who wanted this service. So we had to do something more than this 1 hour a month. And parentheses, Frank was in my office not long ago. I hadn't seen him in a number of years. He's a security guard at a movie studio. And there is no trace left of the angriest moment of his life etched on his forehead. All of us are a whole lot more than the dumbest thing we ever did. And so we have all our businesses, a solar panel installation training program. We have a Homeboy Diner, which is the only place you can get food in the City Hall. Homeboy Bakery still. Homeboy Silkscreen. That's our biggest business, been around for about 18 years. About 2,500 customers for all across the country. High quality work, reasonably priced. We UPS to Spokane. What else? Homeboy Homegirl merchandise, where we sell our logo stuff. And Homegirl Cafe, where women with records, young ladies from rival gangs, waitresses with attitude will gladly take your order, and you've met some of them. In this past year, my favorite story was Diane Keaton, Oscar-winning actress from Annie Hall and the Godfather movies. She showed up for lunch one day with a regular, a guy who's there once a week. And her waitress this day is Glenda, and Glenda's a homegirl, been there, done that, been to prison, tattooed, felon, parolee. She doesn't know who Diane Keaton is. And so she's taking her order, and Diane Keaton says, "Well, what do you recommend?" And Glenda rattles off her 3 platillos that she particularly likes. And then Diane Keaton says, "Well, I like the second one. That one sounds good." And then suddenly something dawns on Glenda. She looks at Diane Keaton. She says, "Wait a minute. I feel like I know you. Like maybe we've met somewhere." And Diane Keaton sort of deflects it humbly. Oh gosh, I don't know, I suppose I have one of those faces that people think they've seen before. And then Glenda goes, no, now I know. We were locked up together. That just took my breath away when I heard it. And suddenly Kinship so quickly, Oscar-winning actress, attitudinal waitress, exactly what God had in mind. And if you'll permit me, this is what I think is on God's mind. And Jesus says it precisely. That you may be one. I suppose he could have been more self-referential, but he decided to just have it be about us. That you may be one. That's the whole 9 yards. All of us are called to be what Alice Miller, the late great child psychologist, calls enlightened witnesses. People who through your kindness and tenderness and focused attentive love return people to themselves. You don't hold the bar up and ask anybody to measure up. You just show up and you hold the mirror up and you tell people the truth. Knowing that your truth is my truth and my truth is a gang member's truth, and it's all the same truth. And here's the truth. You are exactly what God had in mind when God made you. Then you watch folks on the margins become that truth. You watch them inhabit that truth. And no bullet can pierce that. No 4 prison walls can keep that out. And death can't touch it because it's huge. But occasionally you have to reach in and dismantle messages of shame and disgrace that get in the way. The great scripture scholar Marcus Borg says that the principal suffering of the poor throughout history, and of course scripture, is shame and disgrace, and I think he's quite right. On weekends, I'm in 25 different detention facilities on a rotating basis where I go and say Mass, hand out my cards. This is where I first met these 2 guys years ago. And I'm in I'm in 2 juvenile halls, I'm in a couple youth authorities, all the probation camps where kids stay from about 6 months to sometimes a year. And they're usually way out in the boonies, you know. So like this past Saturday I did, you know, a couple masses way out in Las Afueras. And then I have to race back to Dolores Mission because I've been there for 25 years. I know a lot of people. They ask me to do stuff. So my Saturdays almost look the same always. You know, whatever it is, 1 o'clock baptism and 2 o'clock quinceañera when girl turns 15, 3 o'clock wedding, 4 o'clock exorcism. Just checking to see if you're still listening to me. You have to check periodically. So I've never done one of those. But So I came home this one day and it was 20 minutes to 1, and I think, well, I got time to go to my office, which in those days was right on First Street, and I got time to go read my mail. So I went in and, contento, feliz, all by myself, going through my mail. And when all of a sudden this woman comes barging in, and she's 34 years old, I find out. Her name is Lisa. This is the first time she's ever stepped foot in my office. Everybody knows her, or at least seeing her around. She's a street person, prostitute, heroin addict, gang member, tattooed, felon, parolee. She's something of a famous gritona and a peleonera. She's always screaming, she's always fighting. You can hear her scream as they toss her out of the bar next door every day, screaming at the guy who tosses her. You can hear her scream into payphones on First Street, just let me stay tonight, pleading with family and friends. And this is the very first time she's ever stepped foot in my office. And now I'm noticing it's 7 minutes to 1 in my baptism. She comes barreling through and she plunks herself down and she launches right in. I need help. Ooh, I've been to like 50 rehabs. I'm known all over, nationwide. I went to Catholic schools all my life, she says. Graduated from elementary. I even graduated from Sacred Heart High School in Lincoln Heights. And then she got quieted still. And she said, in fact, The first time I ever used heroin was right after I graduated. And I've been trying to stop since the moment I began. And I watched as she leaned her head against the wall behind her, and her eyes became like two ponds, water rising to meet its edges and spilling over. And she cried and she cried, until she finally leveled her gaze at me and she said with great deliberation, "I am a disgrace." And suddenly her shame meets mine, because when I had seen her step into my office that afternoon, I had mistaken her for an interruption. It's mutual. As you inch your way out to the margins and you stand with the folks whose burdens are more than they can bear, the world will accuse you of wasting your time. But the prophet Jeremiah writes, "In this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing." And how is that not the job description of everybody here, but to make those voices heard? I grew up in Los Angeles, 5 sisters, 2 brothers, terrific parents. We lived in a big old house. But my mom used to say, "Don't go to the attic," which of course this is all we needed to hear. We were selling tickets to the attics shortly thereafter. Come one, come all, the attic. So, and there's one time when she wasn't looking, we went up into the attic, and it was kind of planky and precarious, and hence the prohibition, I guess. And we were rummaging through boxes, and we found this old clunky record in one of the boxes. And we dusted it off, and it had one song recorded on this huge record. And the label said, handwritten, Kathleen Conway, my mom's maiden name. And then it said, "O Holy Night," the Christmas Carol. And we rushed downstairs and we put the record on our kitty little phonograph, and we encircled the speakers, lying on our stomachs, resting our chins on our fists. And we couldn't believe our ears that through the scratchiness came this voice and the discovery that our mom, before she decided to have 8 kids, was an opera singer. We couldn't believe that the same woman who hollered at us could belong to such a voice. And so we played the grooves off this thing, and a mantra was born, though I don't recall that I understood it all that much at the beginning. "Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared, and the soul felt its worth." And yeah, it's about Jesus, and yeah, it's about Christmas. But how is that not the job description of everybody in this room? You appear, the soul feels its worth. Exactly right. Nobody in this room has ever met a hopeful kid who joined a gang. That's never happened in the history of kids. It's never happened in the history of gangs. Hopeful kids don't join gangs. This is about, and always has been, a lethal absence of hope. No kid is seeking anything when he joins a gang. He's always fleeing something, always. No exceptions. Gangs are the places kids go when they've encountered their life as a misery, and who doesn't know by now that misery loves company? If we think this is about good and bad choices, then we have to be superior to those who we think have made bad ones. This is about folks who've had to carry more than everybody else. Always. No exceptions. So there I am on Dr. Phil, and we tried to talk the producers down from doing something stupid, you know, like a scared straight kind of thing, and we thought we had succeeded, and then there I am off stage, and it's a taped show, but it's a live audience, and all of a sudden I hear Dr. Phil say, "Father Greg Boyle," and I walk out there, and there's Phil sitting in his stool, and my empty stool is next to him, awaiting me, and on his side of the stage is a coffin, and on my side of the stage is a perfectly reconstructed jail cell with bed, toilet, and sink. Well, you know where this is going, you know. So they fly these poor kids in from all over the country, 15-year-old kids with distraught mothers. We don't know what to do with our kid. We think he's getting perilously close to a gang. And so Phil sort of figuratively grabs them by the lapel and says, don't you see what this choice will mean? Death or prison. So I had to be the one to tell Phil that these kids know this better than we do. The problem isn't that they're not lacking information. They know that it'll end up here or end up there, but they've ceased to care that it will. This is about a lethal absence of hope. You cannot scare a kid straight. You can only care a kid straight. It's about infusing a sense of hope to kids for whom hope is foreign. Parentheses, a couple weekends ago I was at a camp, and a probation camp, and all these gang members, and after Mass, about 5 of them came up, and one kid said, hey, I saw you on Oprah. I said, well, you know, actually it was Dr. Phil. And he goes, oh. I said, yeah, I can't tell those two apart either. And another kid said, you were on Dr. Phil? I said, yeah. Fighting with your wife? I said, yeah, but you know, Phil, you know, he really helped us out quite a bit, you know, and we're getting along just fine right now. You know. Anyway, end of parentheses. So one of the homies that most resisted all my offers of help was a kid named Bandit, and Bandit earned his name, you know. He lived in a Aliso Village housing project, into his gang, into selling drugs. I would ride my bike in the middle of the night, and I'd see him run up to cars, sell crack cocaine, and then he'd be walking away counting his money. And he'd see me as he walked into the light in one of the archways. And I'd say something like, how about a real job? And he was very polite. Oh, I'm okay, G, thanks though. Until one day, 15 years ago, Bandit shows up in my office. I couldn't believe he was there. Y ese milagro that you're here. And he says what homies often say, I'm tired of being tired. So I walk him over to one of our 4 job developers, and as luck would have it, they locate an entry-level, unskilled, low-paid job, first kind of job in a warehouse. Now cut to today, 15 years later, Bandit is the head supervisor of all the supervisors. He runs the whole shooting match. He owns his own home. He's married, and he has 3 kids. And I hadn't heard from him in like 2 years. And he calls me one Friday afternoon, kind of breathless and panicky. And he says, gee, you gotta bless my daughter. I said, ¿Qué pasó, mijo? Is she sick? Is she in the hospital? Oh, no. On Sunday, she's going to Humboldt College. I said, wow. He says, yeah, imagine my oldest, my Jessica. She's going to Humboldt. But that's far, that's way up north, and she's gonna move away, and I don't know, we're scared for her because she's a little chaparrita. Do you think you could give her a blessing before she goes? I go, are you kidding? I'd be honored. Look, tomorrow's Saturday. I have an exorcism at 1. Why don't you come at 12:30 and we'll do a little send-off? And sure enough, they're all there right on time, Bandit and his wife and the 3 kids, including little Jessica. And I said, well, let's stand in front of the altar and let's surround her with our bodies and our love, and everybody touch her, connect to her, grab her arms, and put your hands on her shoulder. Go ahead, put your hands on her head, and I say, close your eyes and bow your heads. And as the homies say, I do a long-ass prayer. I go on, and somewhere in the middle of this thing, I notice that we've all become chillones. You know, we're all sniffling. Man, I don't know why exactly we're crying, except for the fact that Bandit and his wife do not know anybody who's ever gone to college except me, certainly nobody in their families. So, you know, we wipe away our tears and we kind of laugh at about how mushy we got. And so to change the subject, you know, I look at Jessica and I say, hey, what are you going to study at Humboldt College? And she was very quick, forensic psychology. And I go, damn, forensic psychology. And Bandit chimes in, yeah, she wants to study the criminal mind. And Jessica, very deadpan, looks at her father and does one of these, you know, and he sees her and says, yeah, I'm going to be her first subject. So we go out to the car, and big abrazos, and they pile in the car, but Bandit hangs back, and I said, hey, can I tell you something? I give you credit for choosing to be the man that you've chosen to become, for choosing to walk in your own footsteps. I'm proud of you. And his eyes glisten with tears, and he says, ¿Sabes qué? I'm proud of myself. All my life, people called me a low life, a bueno para nada, a good for nothing. I guess I showed him. I said, yeah, I guess you did. And the soul feels its worth. Exactly right. I'm just going to tell one more story. But before I do that, I want to thank you for buying this book. And I want to thank those who run this place for forcing the freshmen to buy this book. If you liked it okay, you know, when Christmas is coming up and you buy like 10 copies for everybody in your family, and it suddenly becomes Tuesdays with Homie, or the Purpose-Driven Homie, or 3 cups of Homeboy. Stop me, stop me. Then I can keep my doors open, you know, because that's the thing that keeps me awake at night, is keeping our doors open and keeping Bobby and Mario paid every 2 weeks. So if somebody comes up to you and say, hey, can I borrow that Tattoos on the Heart? Look them in the eye and say, buy your own damn book. Is that asking too much? So the book came out whenever it came out, but one day I was in my office and I was opening up the mail and had 6 homies in there, and so your editor sends you one hardcover book, you know, and I go, oh my God, it's the book. So they immediately wanted to pass it around and see if their names were in it, you know, and so, you know, my editor got all these nice people to say nice things, Anne Lamott on the cover, and Carrie Kennedy, and Marion Wright Edelman, different things. So, but at the top of the hardcover is Jack Kornfield, who's just a great man and a guru and a philosopher and a psychologist. And he just has 2 sentences here, and the first sentence has a bunch of adjectives that I will spare you. But the second sentence begins this way: Father Greg, the Gandhi of the gangs. Well, when this arrived in the hands of Pascual, who I've known for many years, a gang member, but he went to college, graduated from Northridge, and he at the time was running our parenting division. And apparently, I didn't know this, but part of his job description was to take me down a notch, you know. So he sees this and he goes, the Gandhi of the gangs, you know, like this is way over the top. So the next day, he emails me and he says, here's a blurb for your book. This book is astonishing. Father Boyle is the Sarah Palin of the gangs. In fact, he can see Mexico from his front porch. So I immediately forwarded that to my editor and I said, please, I beg you, put this on the paperback edition. And she just wrote back very simply, O-H-N. Oh, hell no. Oh, well. I tried. All right, one last story, and then I'm going to invite up here Mario and Bobby to just give a snapshot of themselves, and then we'll entertain your questions. I'll anticipate a question. Everybody always asks me about enemies working together. And it's tough, you know, over the years, many thousands of gang members have gone through our place, and all of them are enemies, or had been anyway. So homies will come to me and say, I'm ready, and I'll say, okay, I have an opening in the bakery, but you have to work with X, Y, and Z, and I rattle off the names of enemies, rivals, and they always do the exact same thing. They think for a while, and they say, well, I'll work with them, but I'm not going to talk to them. which used to bother me in the old days until you discover, of course, that you cannot demonize people you know, that human beings can't sustain this for very long. So this one day, this homie named Youngster came to me, and I thought he was ready. So I walk him over to our Homeboy silkscreen factory, and I'm introducing him to his 30 co-workers on the floor of the factory, which is sort of off campus. And I watch him, you know, he's shaking hands, looking folks in the eye, even enemies he's shaking hands. I think, wow, this is great. Until we get around the bend to this one homie named Puppet, and it seemed like he was sort of hiding. And when Puppet and Youngster are in each other's vicinity, they mumble something. They look at their shoes. They stare down. They don't shake hands. Well, I know they're enemies because I know what gangs they come from. But he just finished shaking hands with other enemies. I find out later that this is a hatred that's really quite deep and personal. A hatred beyond which neither of them think they can get past. So I sense that much at the moment. And so I look at them and I say, hey, if you guys can't hang working together, just let me know. I got all these people who would love this job. And they don't say anything. Well, about 6 months later, Puppet is walking to a store not too far from his house, and he decides to take a shortcut on the way home and dodges into an alley. And because he's taken this detour, he's suddenly, unexpectedly, surrounded by 10 members of a rival gang, 10 against 1. And they beat him badly. And while he's lying on the ground, they will not stop kicking his head until he's lifeless. Somebody finds him and takes him to White Memorial Hospital, where he's declared effectively brain dead. But it's the policy there to keep you connected to machines for 48 hours so you can get 2 days of a flat read, and then the doctors sign the death certificate. This allowed family and friends to gather. I was at St. Louis University giving a talk. I flew home. I've seen a lot of horrible things in my life, nothing to compare to the sight of this young man with his head swollen many times its size. It was horrifying. You could barely train your eyes on him. At the end of the 48-hour period, I gave him a blessing and la unción de los enfermos, and we disconnected, and I buried him a week later. But in the first 24 hours, I'm alone in my office. It's 8:30 at night, and the phone rings, and it's Youngster, Puppet's co-worker at the silkscreen. Hey, he says, that's messed up about what happened to Puppet. I said, yeah, it is. And then with a certain kind of eagerness, he says, is there anything I can do? Can I give him my blood? And we both fall silent under the weight of it, until finally he breaks the silence, choking back his tears, and he says with great deliberation, he was not my enemy. He was my friend. We worked together. Now, can I say that always happens? Yes. Any exceptions? No. And it shouldn't surprise us that God's own dream come true for us, that we be one, just happens to be our own deepest longing for ourselves. It's mutual. For the vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, we wait for it. Thank you very much. very much. Are you guys ready? Are you going to go first? Are you changing your mind? Hang on a second. Let's get them riled down. Thank you very much. We're all doing, who's going to go first? I'm going to go first. No, I don't want to go first. You go first. Those who think Mario should go first. No, I'm sorry. No. We'll let Bobby go first. So Bobby has worked for us for about a month, and Mario for 2 months. So they're new to Homeboy, and they're just going to give a little snapshot of their lives. And then we'll open it up to questions. We're not going to do a big, here's the microphone and run up to, just go like this, and we'll repeat the question. And clear? And we'll let you out of here because I know you have to study intermediate accounting. So, Bobby, good luck, my dog.
All right, hello.
Hold the microphone close.
Let me thank you all for coming out and giving us this opportunity to share our stories with you all. We appreciate it. My name is Bobby. Just a little bit, a rundown about myself. I come from a broken home. I was born in prison. My mother, she was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for sexually to murder. She just came home last year in October. She was pregnant with me when she went in, so my grandmother, she took care of me till I was 6, and she passed on. She passed away, and she passed me over to her daughter, to my aunt, and she raised me. It wasn't what a kid was supposed to be around. It was violence, it was drinking, it was partying, and that's how I pretty much grew up. And all my uncles, all my cousins, they were gang members, everybody. So the people she socialized herself with, her boyfriends, her friends, they were all into what she was in. So that led me to running the streets, running wild. No mother, no father, I was just out there. I felt the streets accepted me for who I were, so that's where I went. I was in the streets, I was gang banging, I was running wild, I was hurting people, and I felt I was being hurt, so I continued to hurt people. So I ended up in juvenile facilities, camp, fire. It started from there. And I had my first son when I was 18 years old. And I still was running wild. I still chose the streets over my son, because that's all I knew. And I felt the streets could give me what I needed, love. And I started in and out of jail, county jail. I had my daughter, came home, had a daughter. I still wasn't ready to slow down. I was still running wild, running with the wrong crowd, the wrong people that I thought that loved me, but they was just using me. So I almost lost my life twice before I went to prison for gang violence, shootouts. I knew a lot of people that was close to me that didn't make it, that lost their lives, went off to prison and still in prison with life. So I went to prison. I did 3 years in prison, and there I decided that I was going to change. So I did my time. I came home. I had another baby. It's a lot of babies. I had another baby. From there, I decided to marry my kid's mother. So I'm recently married. I was looking for a job, then nobody wanted to accept me. Gang tattoos, teardrop under my eye, background, no high school diploma, no one over there wanted me. So my mother, she came home, she told me, why don't you go to Homeboy Industry? I said, I heard of that. He used to come out to the camps and juvenile hall and talk to us and pass out his cards. And he always told us, it's a place for me. So I still waited a little bit. So I finally went down to Homeboy Industry. And it's a waiting process when you get in here. So I was just going to school. I was going to school there, taking my GED class, taking anger management, any class that I felt that could help me I attended. So I've been at Homeboy. I've just been working here for a month, but I've been attending the classes for about 3 months. So, and I know Mario. He used to always see me coming up there, catching the bus with my backpack on, with my headphones on, and he used to always shake my hand like, man, good luck on your interview. And he used to always give me words of encouragement and just greet me with somebody I never thought that'd do that to me. Well, my homeboys always tell me, come back to the hood. We got something for you over here. You can make a whole lot of money over here. But I didn't want to go back down that route. Because like Father G said, we all said, I was tired. I was tired of going to jail. I was tired and I had to go to jail and come home and start all over with nothing. So I came every morning. I just came to school every morning. So my interview came up. And I got the job. They told me I couldn't start until February. So I was like, February, that's a long time. So I finally got the chance to meet Father G. And I spoke with Father G and I ran down my situation to him. And this is the first time I heard Father G talk. It was touching. I was down there teary-eyed. I told Father G my story. Father G he called the guy that does all the interviews, the orientations. He called him in there. He said, did anybody show up today? Because if somebody don't show up, you can take their place. So a few people showed up, and I was one of them. I showed up too. So he called me in there, and he gave me the job. I told him that, I started in February. He told Rose, give me the time for it. He gave me a time for it, and I clocked in, and I just looked at him like, this is an angel to me. Father G, some people at the job, they call him Pops. They call him G, they call him Father, because he's just that much to us. Something we never had, so thank you.
You'll be great, son. God, I know you.
I'm nervous.
Hold it up close.
My name is Mario. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. Also, I was in the gang. I started gangbanging. I was 10 years old. I got started kicking with my homeboy. And I joined the gang when I was 10. My dad was in jail. He was in jail for murder, so he left me and my brothers. And it was just me and my brothers, my mom. We're staying in the garage, I remember, and all I seen was just like violence, drinking, everybody was doing drugs, my uncles. And I don't know, I decided to drink, smoke, and gangbang, I liked it, it was nothing out there for me, so I was just on the gang, and I started kicking with my homeboys, and I ended up in juvenile hall. I met Father Greg there. He talked to me a little bit. I was there in juvenile hall. I got out and I went back to juvenile hall again times. After that, after a lot of times that I kept on going back in and out, I went to the California Youth Authority. I got 7 years, and I was there for 2.5. I got out, I kept on doing the same thing. I was messing up, kicking with my homeboys, doing nothing but negative stuff, robbing people, drugs, alcohol, and I ended up in the hospital so many times for drinking, drugs, and the doctor told me I keep drinking more because my pancreas messed up, and I started drinking this at an early age. And I got tired of all that, I got tired of going to jail, county jail, and my mom, my mom was changed my life, you know, around. And I heard about Homeboy since back in 1993, and I just didn't go. I wasn't ready because I liked what I was doing. And I decided to go to Homeboy, and I finally got to talk to Father G, and he gave me this opportunity, you know, or else I don't know, you know, I'll probably be dead or out there in the street, you know. So I thank Father G, you know, for being here. Or I don't know, like I said, or else I'll probably be out there in the street or locked up in life, because I got a lot of cousins there, you know, some of them are dead and some of them are doing life. And I couldn't find a job nowhere else, because I got a lot of tattoos. And I remember going to Walmart, Kmart, agencies, and everybody took everything. Like, okay, we'll call you, but they never took the time and called me. So I was going crazy, you know, I didn't know what to do no more. I was like, damn, what should I do? I got 2 kids, I need money, just a lot of stuff going through my head. Should I go back to my old ways, go robbing people, and just a lot of stuff, a lot of negative stuff. And I was real tired, you know, but like I said, I took the time and I went to Homeboy, and Father Greg gave me this opportunity, you know. And thanks to him, I'm still here, or else, like I said, I'll probably be dead or in jail. That's it, you know. I think Father Greg.
Lovely son. You're great. You're great.
So get ready to answer some questions, okay? Come on up here, you guys. Some of you may remember the book of lists. You know, they remember that book of lists? And one of them there said, what are the top 10 things that people are most afraid of? Death was 6. 1 was getting up and speaking in front of people. So I want to. So as they say in Congress, we yield the balance of our time to your questions. In only 20 minutes. We'll end at exactly 8:30. You will not leave here a minute earlier. And so direct any questions to any one of us, or all 3 of us, or none of us. Just go like this, I'll go like that. Just holler it out. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. This is Gonzaga. Yes, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of the people in your parish there, who were just there? And then you start this parish and you have these other things going on within the boundaries of the parish.
Yeah.
Just people who would come to church on a regular basis and that, you know,
Yeah, the evolution of the parish, the thinking. And yeah, I think that we had, again, everybody, the city of LA experienced the same thing that our little microcosm of parish experienced, which was the demonizing of these guys. So, but then you had to move past that, you know, where all of a sudden the women in the parish said, you are our sons, whether we brought you into the world or not. And that was essential, and that happened. But it took time. It wasn't immediate. You know, there was a lot of resistance, especially when gang members started to show up in large numbers at the church. And so, in fact, they had a meeting basically to toss me out. And I remember telling myself I wouldn't speak at this meeting. It was a huge packed meeting, and it was really the moment of truth. And it was, a lot of people were grumbling. And then the women themselves got up, you know. Gang members come to this church because it is lo que haría Jesús. It's what Jesus would do. And that's why we do it as a parish. And they were very dismissive of me, even the women who were defending me. This is not his decision. This is our decision. You know, and so it was the moment of total ownership of that approach, you know. And it was essential, otherwise. The same thing happened with immigration in that parish, you know, that there was the evolution of caste system, you know. The people were born, Latinos born here were higher than the Mexicans who came here, and they were certainly higher than the Central Americans. It was this thing, and then that got obliterated too. So it was wonderful thing to behold the people grow. Thank you. That's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
Bobby, well, and Mario too, are you able to be in contact with all your children?
Yes.
Going to hold your hand and hold the thing.
Yes, I see my children. I don't really get along with baby mama. But yeah, I see them. You know, I see them. I pick them up and whatever they need. But they're not young. They're young, but kids these days, they want iPods and computers and laptops. So, it's just kind of hard, but I see them and just lead, I talk to them, lead them in the right path, not to be like me. But yeah, I see them.
And you feel like through your experiences, are you able to guide them in a way that will lead them down a different path?
Yeah, I talk to them, especially to my son. I'll talk to my daughter too, but I'll talk to him and I just tell them not to be the way, like me, because they see me with all these tattoos and they ask me questions and I just tell them like, oh, it don't mean nothing, it's just hard, But I talk to them a lot and I try to spend like a lot of time with them,
But you should not tell them to not be like you.
Oh yeah, exactly. Oh yeah,
You are an honorable person.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Give that to Bobby.
Yes, for me, I live with all three of my kids. So I married their mother just recently in February. So
Yes.
So what can we do now? Because we're all the way up here. Like, what can we do other than buy the book?
Other than buy the book? Well, I think you've already done this. It's extraordinary. Like when you had the homegirls come here for the freshman orientation, that's extraordinary. Who would have thunk it? I mean, I never would have thunk it, And so it was very imaginative, and it was a great way to connect. The fact that you, is it once a year, Josh, that the groups go down? It feels like twice a year. But you know what, I think it's once a year, but then you always get folks who come like in the summer who said, yeah, I was here. I always have people come by that. That's great that folks do that. It's a good immersion thing. It's not so much about what you'll do at Homeboy, but it's about what will happen to you if you go there. Did I mention that we UPS to Spokane? That's another one. But just to talk about this, it's an enormously complex social dilemma that requires a certain amount of reverence on our part. So, that can inform your own study. The more all of us can move towards a kind of compassion that deals in awe. So, you're quite right to say, that Mario shouldn't say, I don't want him to be like me. Well, I want his kids to be like him. Amazing heart, kind and gentle, thoroughly 100% good. Completely. Who wouldn't want kids to be like him? In the Acts of the Apostles, in the early Christian community, they said this thing that was sort of a hallmark of that community. And awe came upon everyone. And that's the goal here, as in any place, that awe come upon us, where we move always away from judgment. And that's the goal, and so that's a huge task. And to dedicate yourself to that task is holy. Let's see, yes ma'am.
Now, some of the Gonzaga students have come down to Los Angeles. Do you have any intention for the Homeboys to come up to Gonzaga and actually attend university here?
It's about a question about having, immersion goes down there, and then about having homies come up here. These guys are going to return during the basketball season, I'm told. Do that. I wouldn't say that, you know, because the truth be told, you know, that's not impossible. But, you know, the degree of difficulty is high, you know, because a lot of the guys are really struggling, as the two of them are, to get their GED right now, you know. So that's kind of where we are. It shouldn't surprise anybody that, you know, homies kind of begin with a, yes, Lord. But you said 8:30. So, you know, well, that's a good question to put to these guys. What was your academic experience coming up, like in grade school? You didn't talk about this today. Grade school or high school? What did you go to school?
No,
Junior high?
No, I didn't.
Hold on.
I dropped out of 5th grade. I never went.
After the 5th grade?
I didn't go to school no more.
Wow. Except in juvenile hall and stuff.
Camps, yeah. That was it. But
yeah.
I didn't. I was sitting in the classroom today, and I was like, man, I wish I could go back to school, but
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, Bobby. What was your academic history like?
7th grade, I dropped out, but I was still going to school in the juvenile detention centers, and it was good. They actually did teach us, so they made us learn. So
yeah.
They made us go to school. In juvenile hall, you have to go to school. You have to, so I just said, I'm just gonna stay in here and learn something. I gotta be here, so let me learn a little something. That's it.
They were in a philosophy class today, and they found it thrilling. So so it's possible. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you.
This week for our club, La Raza Latina, we're celebrating the Dream Act for Dream Week this week. And I was just wondering, since a lot of your homeboys seem to be affected by immigration issues, if Homeboy Industries has or ever will consider in the future maybe working alongside the Dream Act, since it didn't get passed this year.
Yeah, the question is about the Dream Act. Yeah, we actually work advocating for exactly that at Homeboy. We're always trying to find the larger issue, you know. Dream Act is one where homies and homegirls go to events, and it's part of our consciousness, especially in our morning meetings when we gather every morning. Another issue is, and it's important to remind ourselves that in terms of issue and laws, that we are the only country on the planet Earth that sentences children to die in prison. The only one. And you can imagine right now maybe countries that you don't like very much, or countries you might even call enemies, they don't do that. We do this. We sentence children to die in prison. So in the state of California anyway, you get a 15-year-old or 16-year-old who's tried, a juvenile tried as an adult, and then is given 125 years to life in prison. We're the only country on the planet that does it. Shame on us. That's something we can do. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, you guys have been at Homeboys for a couple months now. What do you see in your futures in like the next couple of years or 10 years? Where do you want your lives to go? Where do you want to be in 10 years?
Wow.
Hold it close.
I want to be like a counselor, talk to like younger people, you know, and you know, I don't talk that much. I'm kind of shy, but like if you catch me like a one-on-one, I'll talk. But I mean, like I said, I've never done this, but I would like to be a counselor and help other people to go to the right path.
Bobby.
See myself, first I gotta get my GED first. So, same as what Mario said, I want to, you know, reach out to the youth and what they're going through and what I've been through. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now. I just want to help them and give them the love Father G gave up, give back like he gave us. So that's my plan.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
both from a lot of them. Like I got homeboys that tell me, they pat me on my back, they tell me I'm doing a good job and keep up the good work. And then you got a lot of them that try to pull you back in, like, come on, man. You telling me you just gonna leave us like that? But you got a lot of them that tell us, man, go ahead, man, ain't nothing going on over here. Get your life together. So sometimes you got the ones that try to pull you back in and probably say a little something bad about you to try to smut your name, to try to make you look like he ain't nobody, he ain't nothing. So when you see him, get him in the streets. But you still got a lot of them, they got a lot of love for you and respect what you're doing.
Do you want to say something about that? No, okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
They speak of violence being a learned behavior, and hearing of like both your home situations growing up has certainly fit that theory. And so how, like through your upbringing and then into like rehabilitation, like prison, how did you unlearn that behavior of yours and rid yourself? And like how much of it was self-therapy compared to like the collective therapy out there at Homeboy?
Yeah. And maybe even that glass, talk about that glass. Here you go. Talk about that class, that violence class. No?
Like I said, you get tired of the same old thing. You get tired. And like I say, coming to Homeboy, it's taught us a lot to work with rivals that I wouldn't even spoke to. I try to take the head off of my team on the street. So Homeboy it's like, it's giving me morals, you know what I'm saying? So I can see an enemy that don't work at Homeboy. I can see him out in traffic and I can embrace him. You know, even though he don't know what Homeboy's got to offer, and he don't know what's going on. But I can be a bigger person and give him a hug and say, man, it's all right. You know, I ain't tripping on you. You know what I'm saying? Going about your way. So, and we took a class not too long ago, me and Mario, about violence. And it was teaching us I messages and how to be the bigger person if me and Mario was to have a heated situation, how I would be or Mario would be the bigger person to say, you know what, man, you right. You right. I was wrong, you right. And walk away. Even if Mario don't feel he's right, he still want to go on with the heated, so I'll just be right, man. Go ahead. And I'll walk off. So, teach you. It's good at Homeboy. And I'm glad I'm there, I'm glad I went, and I'm glad I'm getting the help that I needed. And it's just good.
Want to say anything? Yes, sir.
Hey, this is kind of a selfish question because I'm getting ready to be a teacher, but I know that a lot of people at Gonzaga are also into volunteering and helping out kids in the community. And Spokane, I mean, obviously doesn't have as big a gang problem as you guys, grew up with. So I guess this is for everybody, which is, I mean, I see these kids all the time who just, given up hope. And so what can I do, but also, what can we do as we, work with kids? What's like the biggest thing, that we can do to reach out to them specifically?
The poet writes, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, that sings the song without the words and never stops at all. It's always about singing the song without the words. We always think it's about words. We always think it's about more information. And we always think it's about inserting message here. But it never is. I'll tell you, frankly, that in the course of this day, you have received Mario and Bobby with such care and cariño and affection that I think they will leave here feeling more valuable than they did when they arrived. And that's because you just valued them. And that's compelling. That infuses a sense of hope. Loving, caring adults who show up and pay attention with kids is what works. And so it's not so much the advice you give. People are always saying, what should I tell them? But it's just showing up and accompanying, and you're modeling kind of what needs to happen. And then you start to help them imagine what the road will look like down a piece. And then until such time as they can see it for themselves. That's huge. And that's what every teacher does. It's great. Yes, back there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said Homeboy industry was founded in the early 90s. Now, having to be that old, have you had any second generation Homeboys? Or have you seen the effect that giving people an opportunity to change their circumstance alleviates that pressure of their children?
Well, it was started in '88, and we have a lot of kids of homies who are part-timers, you know. I just wrote an op-ed piece on Labor Day where they said, tell us about your first job. And my first job was I worked at Western Farms Dairy, which was founded by my great-grandfather, and every male Boyle worked there, and loading trucks and that kind of thing, and I paid for my whole high school doing it. But the great grace of the thing was to be around all these, you know, knucklehead, colorful truck drivers who would put their arm around me and then they'd point, because my father worked there, and they would point at my dad and they would say, "Now that's a great man." And you know, when you're a teenager, you don't think that about your dad. I didn't think father knew best, you know. But that was a key moment in my life, because then I discovered that the best man I ever knew was the first man I ever met. So that happens a lot now at home, because a lot of times homies are estranged from their kids. They've been in prison for a long time. So when a homie brings in their son or daughter, and we've got a handful of them now, and you know, do you think there's any way you could hire him here? And I always say yes, because I want to be able to put my arm around that homie, around the kid, the son, and say, "You see your father over there? He's one of the best men I know, and he's a great man, and you should be proud to have him as your father." So that kind of generation is coming. But having said that too, you know, violence is not what it was in 1992. All of us lived through the decade of death, which was '88 to '98. But since 1992, we had 1,000 gang-related homicides in LA County, and that's been cut in half, and then cut in half again. So I think in LA anyway, all hands on deck people rolling up their sleeves and doing all the things that need to get done has really worked. And so I'm hopeful. How about one last? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say, AGN it's almost 8:30 now.
Oh, all right. Well, that wasn't a question, but one last question. Yes.
I just want to know, do you guys think that joining gangs is a product of like corrupt homes, or is it a community that kind of like causes that, like schools?
Do you want to say anything? You know, again, part of the problem is, you know, I grew up in the gang capital of the world, and 2 great parents and 5 sisters and two brothers, and I had a happy home. There was no chance that I ever would have joined a gang. Period, the end, never. That fact does not make me morally superior to Mario and to Bobby. Quite the opposite. The day won't ever come when I have more courage, or I am more noble, or I am closer to God than Mario and Bobby. And that's important, because in the end, it becomes about understanding what people have to carry. And we're all born equal, but we don't end up equal. And I don't think it's so much a societal thing. Well, I do, probably, ultimately, you know, in terms of the haves and the have-nots, and access to those things that enhance the quality of our lives. That part is true. I guess what I don't want it ever to be seen as is as some kind of moral thing, because I don't think it's about right and wrong. I think it's about who gets to carry more than others. And at the same time, we need to shine a light on the great disparity that's growing ever more broad in this country between those who have access to things and those who don't. Anyway, thank you very much.